All right, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. The show that's back in football season. Only show you need to be listening to, quite frankly, because we got all the sports that are named college and pro football, and then we just kind of skimp on the other ones because we're a football show here. So if you're just looking for football, you've come to the right place. And today, college football episode, big week of college football games. Next week, not so much, but this week, very big week. Had some giant matchups, including that Texas versus Bama game. Stunner for some, kind of a stunner to me, quite frankly, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Ole Miss squeaking past, well, I say squeaking, they won by three scores, but squeaking past relatively. We definitely snuck past, squeaked past, even if you will, Arizona. What a weekend of college football, though, and there are a couple themes we're going to hit on, but enough bloviating at the top. Let's just get straight into the schedule, shall we? We are back in the closet of shame, where there is not great reception in here. Not great reception. Well, the reception is all right. The problem is the Wi-Fi is terrible in the closet of shame. It's shameful, even, you could say. So I'm on my phone using the old data to look at these games. So first and foremost, we'll start at the biggest marquee matchup of the week, that being Texas at Alabama. Texas won this one 34-24. Quinn Ewers put the dagger in them with a absolutely beautiful moonshot deep ball to Xavier Worthy. Outside of that, honestly, hand up, we're in the circle of trust here. I'm a Mississippi State fan, and Mississippi State was playing at the exact same time. Is it very professional to watch Mississippi State Arizona predominantly over the biggest game of the week, Texas Alabama? Probably not. But you know what? I'm not a responsible professional podcast host. I'm a homer, and it is what it is. That being said, I mean, you just go through this thing. I think Alabama rushed for a little bit under 3.5 yards per carry. Rushed for 3.1 actually. Jalen Milroe looked bad in this one. Had a couple really pretty passes, but ended up going like 14-27. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Had some real bad throws in this one. And then you just look on the other side, and Texas just kind of came out, smacked him in the mouth in the second half here. I mean, scored 3 touchdowns in the second half to put this one away. Bama picked up the scoring as well in the second half. They only scored 6 in the first half, but did not end up going their way. I mean, could not get any push on the line of scrimmage. Milroe didn't look great. Got some questions there at quarterback now in light of that. I mean, was not a great day at all for the Alabama Crimson Tide on either side of the ball. And really, I mean, they got a bajillion penalties as well in this one. Just not a good day at all. Not a good day for Alabama. Texas, on the other hand, though, I mean, Quinn Ewers, man, you want to talk about a guy that really announced himself on the national stage. I mean, 24-38, 349 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers all game. He was spectacular. Here comes Sneeze. Yeah. All right, we're doing all right. And that's all right there. I mean, Jatavian Sanders, a guy that I didn't even really know who it was, 5 receptions, 114 yards. A.D. Mitchell, remember that guy from Georgia? He had 3 receptions for a whopping 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. Xavier Worthy, like I just talked about, caught the dagger, 5 receptions on the day for 75 yards and a touchdown. I mean, the defense played well. Anthony Hill had 2 sacks in this one. I mean, just across the board, Texas announced that they had arrived here. I mean, I think it is. I'm not totally going out on a limb and saying it just yet, but this was the toughest game of the year, arguably, for Texas, and they came out here and won by double digits, 2 scores. Man, I am inches away. I am just so close away from saying Texas is back. It's been too long. I can't do it. It's been since Colt McCoy. I was in middle school the last time that this team went to a national championship, was prominent on the national stage. It has been so long since they were good. I don't even truly remember the heydays of Texas because they were so long ago, and I was just a wee little boy who didn't watch a whole lot of football back then. Now, I mean, the hype train is coming. The hype train is coming fast, and it is coming hard. And you can take that phrase for anything you want, quite frankly. It is what it is at this point. Texas, whether they're back or not, the fans are going to be all over the place, being, I mean, just the best kind of insufferable. I mean, when big brands like this are good, it's just good for the whole sport, quite frankly. And even though the Pac-12 is disintegrating before our very eyes, it looks like Texas, Miami, who we'll talk about in just a second, at the very least, those two are making a comeback and getting back on the national stage and looking a lot better than they have been over the last several years. It's good. You want to talk about competitive parity? Mississippi State's not coming up there year after year and knocking on the door of a national championship, and they probably never will. At the very, very best, once every 3 or 4 years, if a few things go their way, maybe they can sneak into a playoff. That is the best case scenario for what a Mississippi State fan can hope for. It's different when you're talking about a Texas or a Miami. When that thing is firing on all cylinders, they could be in the national championship hunt every single year. You talk about right up there with the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Alabamas, the Georgias of the world. If you want true competitive parity, you got to have the big boys, the blue blood brands, playing like the blue blood brands. And I'm liking the direction of Texas. I'm liking the direction of Miami. We'll talk about it here in just a second. But Texas, in general, like I said, this was the easiest game left on their schedule. They came out here, took care of business, and now you just got to not trip up in Big 12 play pretty much. I mean, you got that Oklahoma game looming on the horizon here at some point. But outside of that, they should be favored. I mean, hell, even in the Oklahoma game, they should be favored in every single game going forward from here until the Big 12 championship game even, assuming that they get there. I said it in the preseason in the little lightning round preview episode. There is no reason that this team should not be in contention for a playoff spot. After winning this game, cements that even more in my mind. I think they're right up there. Another blue blood brand that I didn't even talk about right there, Florida State, right up there as well in the playoff talk this year. We might have a lot of fresh blood in the playoff hunt this year. In the last year of the 4-team playoff, because y'all needed more parity. It just sickens me. You all sicken me, but I digress on that front. We should have a lively postseason this year, and I think really going from that Texas game, because we got to keep it moving here. We got a lot of games to talk about. I want to get through all of them here, but bouncing off of that Texas game with Alabama on the other side, Alabama wasn't the only one to struggle this week. I mean, just going down the list, Tennessee was in a dogfight with Austin Peay for, I mean, most of the game. They ended up winning 30-13, but they looked bad for most of the way through. Mississippi State barely escaped Arizona with what I can only describe as the most conservative play calling I have ever seen from a non-triple option offense. I mean, going into overtime, because Mississippi State won in overtime 31-24, going into overtime, Will Rogers, who was like top 5 all-time in SEC passing. He had 15 passing attempts. 15 passing attempts. And I think a big reason why they won in overtime is because I don't know if Arnett stepped in. I don't know if Barbe pulled his head out of his ass. But they started airing it out in the overtime, putting the ball in the hands of the best player on the team on offense and in Will Rogers. And lo and behold, it worked out. And then on the other side, they got off the field. But that is all to say, Mississippi State, I mean, if you just take the first drive of the second half and the first quarter of the game where they turned Jaden DeLora over like 3 times, they looked terrible in this one. They didn't look like, I mean, if you just took those, they'd look like one of the best teams in the country. But outside of that, they looked terrible in this one. Vanderbilt got beat by Wake Forest, who is a bottom 3 team in the ACC. Not a good team at all. Never forget that the SEC media thought that Vanderbilt was better than Mississippi State. Hilarious. So yeah, they did bad in this one. Many people thought that they would be good this year. Never expect Vandy to be good. Just be pleasantly surprised if they are. That's my general. It's my general thought on Vanderbilt every given year. Georgia, I mean, they were playing Ball State. They won by 6 touchdowns, 45-3. Nothing to see there. But Kentucky, it was a 2-score game with Eastern Kentucky. They won 28-17. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they struggled with Eastern Kentucky in this one. Ole Miss and Tulane. They end up winning by 3 scores. They get some garbage time points in that, though. I mean, it was a 1-score game with just a couple minutes left in this one, and that's with Tulane starting a backup quarterback. Michael Pratt is not in this game at all in this one. He was out with an injury. The backup, whose name escapes me right now, was playing, and Tulane stayed right in there with it. And I get it. It was in New Orleans. It's a hostile environment for Ole Miss to walk into, but they didn't look good at all in this one. Texas A&M, I mean, they got absolutely smacked across the face by Miami, ranked 23 going into this one, now unranked after this game. Miami came out there. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke lit the damn place up, 21 of 30, 5 touchdowns in this one, no turnovers on the day. They did basically whatever they wanted on offense. I mean, they looked dominant, but Texas A&M, that offense didn't look good down the stretch in this one. Arkansas, I mean, they end up winning 28-6, but 28 points against Kent State, one of the worst teams in the FBS. That's not good. We just talked about Texas beating Alabama. Missouri, I mean, they won by 4 points against Middle Tennessee after Alabama beat them by 50 last week. LSU, I mean, what did I say on the last episode? I don't know what the line is going to be, but I'm probably betting it. I didn't end up betting it because the line ended up being minus 56.5 pregame. All they did was go on to cover that, winning 72-10. They started out slow, but by God did they turn it on at some point. They still looked all right this past week. I mean, Florida, they beat McNeese 49-7. South Carolina, it looks like their defense can't stop a nosebleed. They gave up 21 to Furman. Yes, they won 47-21, but they gave up way too many points to a team like Furman. Auburn just barely escaped by the skin of their teeth against California. That was out on the West Coast. Talked about that one maybe being a tricky game, but they only scored, I mean, it was 14-10. That's a low-scoring game by NFL standards, let alone college football standards. So, I mean, across the board, outside of a few exceptions where they just outclassed the opponents, like, I think basically everyone who was playing out of conference should have won fairly easily this week outside of Alabama with Texas. And like I said, Alabama lost. A bunch of teams looked bad. This might be the weakest year in the SEC in quite some time, because even talking about that number one team in the conference, Georgia, number one team in the country to this point because they've won back-to-back national championships, we still don't really know what Carson Beck is going to look like against big-time competition. We think he's probably going to look good. I mean, there's a reason he was a 5-star quarterback, got an arm for days. Yet to be seen what the receiver room looks like, but you got Brock Bowers. It can only be so bad, quite frankly, right? And that's the tight end position where it's just like, hey, what would you like to have as a young quarterback just getting his feet wet in the starting lineup? Well, I would like a security blanket. How about the greatest tight end I have ever seen on a college football field? Here you go. Just have that guy. So I think he'll probably end up all right, but he's unproven. Alabama's offense looked just miserable against Texas this past week. Maybe they turn it on down the stretch and really kick in the run game in this one, but they didn't look awesome. I mean, LSU looked hapless against Florida State. They picked it up against Grambling, but you're expected to pick it up against Grambling. What do they look like? We'll find out this week when they face Mississippi State. I mean, just based on the way both sides of the ball played for Mississippi State, I could see LSU possibly winning by 40 in that one. I hope not. I hope I'm absolutely wrong, but I'm worried about what I saw there from Mississippi State. But they're an unproven commodity, LSU. Jaden Daniels, I mean, he was elusive as all hell in the first game, but didn't really complete a whole lot of downfield passes, looked kind of discombobulated at times. Yes, his receivers dropped a million balls in that week one, but it just looked like he was a lot better with his legs than he was with his arm, I'll put it that way. And does that continue into SEC play? I don't know. Texas A&M, is that offense really legit this year under Bobby Petrino? I think it's probably better than it was under Jimbo Fisher's tutelage, but there's no guarantee that they kick it in SEC play. And if they start struggling, how long does it take for Jimbo Fisher to grab the wheel and take back control of this offense once again? I don't know on that one. I mean, just across the board, no one looks great this year. At least not so far. Maybe Georgia can round into that, but no one looks just overpowering in the SEC. I mean, really even think about a wider scope. I mean, I suppose Ohio State is down. Michigan looks about as good as they ever have. USC, they ain't got a defense to save their life, but they look good. I mean, Texas looks like a force of nature this year. Florida State looks like a force of nature this year. I mean, I still think probably top to bottom, the SEC is the deepest conference in the country. But there's no denying, I think, after watching these first couple weeks, they might be the weakest they've been in the last couple years at the very. I don't remember a time when the SEC was in such flux, and it could be a fun season that really could turn into, because you don't have necessarily the cream of the crop top end talent to just absolutely bully everyone else into submission. But I mean, maybe that turns into some upsets, but hell, if Georgia comes out here, loses 2 games this season, and I think the SEC West is just going to brutalize each other. I think Alabama's probably going to pick up another loss along the way. I think LSU's probably going to pick up another loss on the way. I think at the very best, you're looking at a 2-win champion of the SEC West, representing the in the SEC title game. If Georgia either loses another game in the regular season, or they lose a game in the conference title, I don't know if a 2-loss SEC team makes it into the playoff this year. Maybe they do, just based off of conference reputation and whatnot. I'm not sure if a 2-loss conference champion in the SEC would be worthy of a shot at the title this year, quite frankly. And again, they might actually get the opportunity to, because of biases and whatnot, but make no mistake about it, there is a real possibility the SEC is shut out of the playoff this year. That would be a shocker, quite frankly, but it's not totally out of the question at this point in the season. No one, like I said, no one's looked great. There's a lot of teams from across the country that have looked better than a lot of teams in the SEC this year. Again, granted, the season is young, but man, this might be one for the ages as far as the rest of the country is concerned, because the SEC is looking a little bit down this year. But keep an eye on that. For all I know, next week everyone can come out looking like they're just barnstorming successes this season. But speaking of barnstorming successes, let's just jump over to the Pac-12, shall we? Because I think you can already consider what we've seen so far from Colorado a barnstorming success this year. They beat Nebraska 36-14. Your boy cashing on that one. Didn't make that a public bet, but I said, you know what? I'm a sucker. I'll bet on Colorado -2.5. They covered that with ease. Looked like Nebraska was going to make it a bit of a rock fight in the first half, but Colorado just pulled away in the second half. Shedeur Sanders had another big-time game. I think he had 390 yards, something like that. Yeah, 393, 31 of 42, 2 touchdowns through the air. The 2 touchdowns actually doesn't seem like a whole lot. Let me investigate a little further at the stat line, see if he's had a little bit more to do there. No, yeah, he had another one on the ground too. So I mean, three total touchdowns, 393 yards through the air. Dylan Edwards ended up averaging like 6 yards a carry. And the ground game wasn't the greatest in the world. I mean, Xavier Weaver, a second straight 100-yard game. He had 170 yards in this one and a touchdown. Travis Hunter, all he did was 3 catches for 73 yards. No, ho-hum, who's to say what happens from there? He was doing all right, I guess. Also defended a pass on the other side of the ball. 4 solo tackles in this one. Just an absolute animal on the other side of the ball. I mean, Colorado, obviously, I don't think they're going to be as bad as I thought they were, and I'm still not sure they're better than a 7-win team, but they're certainly pushing me to think that they might be. I mean, what do they not have? Well, they don't have a defensive line. I'll say that right now. I mean, really, Travis Hunter is the one saving grace on the defensive side of the ball. I would say that they don't have a whole lot of players on defense outside of Travis Hunter. And, granted, Travis Hunter is spectacular, but they need a little bit more than that. On offense, though, I mean, you got a really solid running back in Dylan Edwards. You got a legitimate, I mean, Kuiper just came out, or I guess it was McShay that came out today and said he's basically a shoe-in high first-round pick, and I would tend to agree with that with what he's done so far this season. You got that at quarterback. You got Travis Hunter playing wide receiver on this side. Xavier Weaver on the outside really playing well, being truly the number 1 wide receiver, I would say. Travis Hunter maybe being 1A or number 2. offensive line, who's to say? I mean, you got a damn good play caller in Sean Lewis. I hope Deion Sanders is looking around the country and surveying his options, because I don't think Sean Lewis is going to be there for more than 1 year. I think he takes over some job after this season, because he is a damn good offensive play caller. That was known coming in, and it's certainly known for sure now. I mean, at Kent State, he was basically the only team all year to score points on Georgia at a regular clip. And he was playing with like Kent State talent. That's how good of a play caller Sean Lewis is, and he's showing it at Colorado right now. I really think very highly of this Colorado team. And again, I mean, I say again, I brought this up back when Deion Sanders was first hired. It's one thing to bring Deion Sanders in. That's a given. That's going to bring some juice to your program. What made me very excited, and why I thought maybe not this year, but going forward, Deion Sanders would make something of this Colorado team and put them right in the upper echelons of the sport, is the coaching staff that he put together. He brought the number one defensive coordinator with him from the FCS, that being I forget his name. I put myself in a corner there, but he was the defensive coordinator at Jackson State, who had like the number one defense every single year he was there. He's now the defensive coordinator at Colorado. They got Sean Lewis on the offensive side. They got Deion Sanders overseeing the whole thing. I really like this coaching staff that was put together. I wasn't sure the players would be up to snuff to play as well as they have, but they're seemingly proving me wrong, and I still don't know what they're going to end up being. I don't think they're going to end up being a 9-win team. I'll say that right now. Maybe they win 8. I think 7-5 is probably where they're at right now. I think they're going to be a very fun 7-5 team. I'm not sure there's a line that they could put, or a total line that they could put on that USC Colorado matchup that I won't absolutely hammer the over on. I mean, they could probably set that at 85, and I'll still say, you know what, sounds good, sign me up, I'll probably take that one. And that's probably not too far off from what they're going to set it over there. I think they're going to be a fun team, that is to say, and they're part of a really fun conference there in the Pac-12. I'm not sure how good they are, but man, through the first 2 weeks, they have looked as good as anybody else in the country, and I'm looking forward to seeing if they can continue it. I think Deion Sanders has got something going there, and it's just fun, good for the sport. Good to have personalities like that at the head coaching position. Just different guys out there is what you love to see. Utah went on the road and beat Baylor with their backup quarterback still. Cam Rising still not in there. I want to say Blake Shapen was out for Baylor as well. Did my boy Sawyer Robertson start? Yeah, Sawyer Robertson, well, he started, he just went 12 for 28, 218 yards, 2 interceptions, so he played bad. He played very bad, but, former Mississippi State product. Maybe we dodged a bullet on that one. Who's to say? I'll step away from that one right now, but I need to look at this stat line a little bit more, because Bryson Barnes was just god-awful in this one for Utah. I mean, 6 of 19. Actually somehow worse than Sawyer Robertson played for 71 yards. I think redshirt freshman, dual threat guy, dynamic if you watched him in the Florida game. I mean, scored one of those touchdowns for Utah in the Florida game. Nate Johnson came in, went 6 of 7, 82 yards. He'll probably start going forward. I think he provides a little bit more juice to the lineup, if you will. Also scored a touchdown on the ground, which helped them out. Jaquindon Jackson, what a name. I love that name. Jaquindon Jackson went for 129 yards in this one. 4.8 yards per carry as a team, 2 touchdowns, and that's including the quarterback rushing numbers, which we all know are just absolutely fucked up in the college ranks. I don't have to get into that whole spiel right now, but I mean, Utah as a team, 12 of 26 for 153 yards, 5.9 yards per attempt, and 1 interception passing. That's bad. That's really bad. And yes, Dave Aranda is a very good defensive mind, but that's bad. And somehow, I mean, Baylor comes out of this looking even worse because they lost to the team with that kind of passing statistics against them. Final 20-13 rather. Utah. Utah's now 2-0. Baylor is now 0-2, and Dave Aranda is firmly got his cheeks on the hot seat right now. It's only going to get hotter the more they lose, and the Big 12 is no slouch this year, as they are every year. Could be a rough year for them down in Baylor. I like Dave Aranda, though. I hope he sticks around for longer just because I think he's a hell of a coach. And if they fire him here, I think eventually maybe he'll have to get a defensive coordinator job first, but he'll excel at that, and then eventually he'll go into another head coaching job, which I think he'll excel at once again. I just think the world of Dave Aranda. I mean, he's kind of a young coach, but I think he's just got the demeanor. I think he's got the stuff to come out here and really be a great coach, a great head coach when it's all said and done. But that's at Baylor. We'll see, though. He is firmly on the hot seat at this point. Just talked about Colorado, Nebraska, Mississippi State beating Arizona. I am worried about the LSU game, but I digress. Washington just ran Tulsa off the field. I think Michael Penix passed for another 400 yards in this one. 409 on 28 of 38 passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. I mean, just absolutely torched Tulsa like they were expected to. I believe the line on that was like, I actually don't remember. I think it was like minus 30 or something like that. I mean, Washington came in there and just ran them off the field pretty much. Outside of that, I mean, I say outside. I need to focus on it for just a second. The Washington Huskies, talk about it like a dark horse national championship contender. They have been dominant so far this year. I mean, very, very dominant this year. What do they have in the Pac-12 that no one else or that everyone else doesn't have as far as the contenders are concerned? They got a top-end quarterback, probably a top 10, top 15 pick in this upcoming draft in Michael Penix. They got a legit number 1 wide receiver, the returning yardage leader at receiving for the Pac-12 conference in Rome Odunze. They got this guy Jalen McMillan, I think. Jalen McMillan out there at wide receiver. He just went for 100 yards in this game against Tulsa. Backfield, who cares? It's more of a more of an air raid style system with Kalen DeBoer anyways, so I'm not too worried about that. Defensively, they stink, but so does literally everyone else in the Pac-12, so there's not really much to go off there. I mean, if they can somehow find a way to beat USC, beat Oregon, beat Utah, beat Oregon State, I mean, put their resume up next to everybody else in the other conferences. How do you not think Washington is a possible playoff contender, possible national championship contender when it's all said and done? Again, this is maybe the most wide open field of contenders we've had in the 14 playoff era. I am sad to see it go to 12 because that's going to be, I mean, at the very least, the first round is going to have home playoff games, so have fun with that, I guess, and have fun with your longer commercial breaks because they stopped stopping clocks on the first downs and just replaced that with more commercial time. That's always fun. I don't know exactly where I was going with that. I'm just pissed off about that one. That's just total BS, total bullshit. Just ham-fisted, obvious, blatant greed when it comes to just getting your ad dollars out there. I won't belabor that point, but it does piss me off. Again, though, I cannot reiterate this enough. This could be an all-time classic race to the playoff down the stretch. I mean, the regular season could get absolutely wild this year. It could be a classic college football season in this end of the 4-team playoff era as we know it. I still don't know what they're going to do about that quote-unquote automatic qualifier thing because I don't think it should be a thing in the first place. But I don't control those sorts of things. But you can't have an automatic qualifier next year from the Pac-12. I'll tell you that right now. They got 2 teams right now. Stanford, Cal, they found a way to get off the sinking ship. Oregon State and Washington State are the only ones left. Like, what are they going to do? I mean, you can't have an automatic qualifier for a conference that has 2 teams. Hell, you can't even really be considered a conference at the NCAA level unless you have 8 teams. So what's going to go on with that? I don't know about that going forward. But this year, focusing on this year, this could be a absolutely loaded class of contenders, and only 4 of them are going to make it. Who is the cream that's going to rise to the top this season? We will find out as it goes along. Oregon just barely snuck by Texas Tech. As Josh Pate likes to call it, Texas Tech was in wounded animal mode, which, understandable. Most Most dangerous animal is the one that is wounded and backed into a corner. Texas Tech was both after losing week 1 to Wyoming. I mean, they rightly felt like they absolutely needed to win something fierce in the second game, so they took Oregon right down to the wire. Oregon just barely covered the spread, I think, in this one. Absolutely sucks. Excuse me, if you were betting on Texas Tech in this one. So I mean, there is that, but. When it was all said and done, I mean, 38-30 came right down to the wire. Just a really, I mean, a gutsy performance from Texas Tech. They just couldn't quite get it done. Oregon, I think, surviving that, and Bo Nix still having 32 for 44, 359, 2 touchdowns through the air. I mean, man, you could have come out of this a lot worse, and I think it proves a lot of Oregon's mettle coming into this environment and escaping with a win, not getting blown back like you've seen some teams do in the past. I think Oregon coming in here winning a game is a big time step. And again, another team where what do they have that the other contenders in the Pac-12 don't? I mean, star quarterback, probably a first round pick when it's all said and done. Maybe the best running back in the conference in Bucky Irving right now. Troy Franklin's really emerging on the outside as a wide receiver. I think they probably have the best defensive line of anyone in the conference right now. Hell, Oregon might be the strongest of the contenders in the Pac-12, and they're only ranked 13th right now. I mean, and sure, it's the AP. They have all sorts of dumb ideas, but man, this is, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it is a dandy of a group of contenders this year. I'll tell you that right now. But Texas Tech starting 0-2. I think they're still probably a pretty good team, and they might go on a little run here in the Big 12. But man, tough one in this one. Tyler Shugg, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Got another touchdown on the ground and 100 yards, mind you, on the ground as well. Did everything he could to win, but those 3 interceptions were just entirely too much, and this one end up going down. I like I said, I still think they're going to go on a bit of a run here in the Big 12, make something out of this season. Joey McGuire probably going to get poached by someone either this season or next season. It is only a matter of time because he is one of the hot rising name in the college coaching circles right now. But for this season, I still think they got a pretty good chance to make a run down the stretch here. I've not lost faith in Texas Tech. That being said, if they go down to 0-3, I might jump off that sinking ship real quick, and it might be too late at that point. I might be sucked down with the ship itself. But I digress. We got to keep this thing moving. We are a half hour into this, and I've not even gotten through 2 conferences. Wisconsin loses to Washington State on the road. This was a dangerous one coming in. Washington State, I mean, you're going across the country over to the Pac-12. New offense, new head coach. Opportunities abound to slip up, and that's exactly what they did. Washington State took care of business. They're now ranked at the back end of the top 25. Wisconsin, not so much after this one. UCLA took care of business versus San Diego State. I'm interested to see who started this one for Dante Moore, actually. And that's a big-time name y'all should keep your eyes on. He was a 5-star quarterback coming in to UCLA. He is a true freshman. He went 17 of 27, 290 yards, 3 touchdowns in this one. And he's probably starting from here on out at quarterback. Very, very talented true freshman who's only going to get better throughout the course of this season. That's going to be fun to watch. But for right now, UCLA takes care of business 35-10 versus San Diego State. Oregon State, they played UC Davis, so not really much we can learn here, but they looked just as dominant as they did last week. DJ Uiagalelei had another big day. I mean, not a whole lot of overall production, but 8 of 13, 2 touchdowns through the air. I'm trying to see if he had any on the ground. Yeah, he had 1 touchdown on the ground, so 3 touchdowns on the day, and then his day was just over from there. They did a bunch of rushing in this game because they just absolutely dominated on the ground. I mean, 7.3 yards per carry as a team, and that is even including the BS rushing statistics of the quarterbacks. But, I mean, by the way, Aiden Childs, the backup to DJ Uiagalelei, had 4 carries for 42 yards and a touchdown. So, I mean, hey, that actually helps the situation a little bit, but I digress. Oregon State, I mean, beat the piss out of UC Davis like they were supposed to. Not really much to see there. USC absolutely killed Stanford, but they also killed the over by not allowing Stanford to score more than 10 points. Literally, if they get a field goal, they cover that 68-point over-under. If they get a safety even, they score enough to break even and get a push on that 68-point over-under. Didn't even get any of that. Didn't get any of that whatsoever. So final was 66 total points, and they killed our bets from there. Sorry about that, boys and girls. 1-3 first week of bets. That's rough. That is rough right there. I'll tell you that right now. But USC still looking great. Caleb Williams still, the shoo-in for number one overall pick this year. I think this is about the clearest number one overall pick we've had in quite some. I'm not even sure Trevor Lawrence was as clear a selection as Caleb Williams is at number one overall, just because of how spectacular Caleb Williams has been this year. Looking forward to seeing him against some actual high-level Pac-12 competition going forward here. Talked about Auburn. Well, briefly talked about Auburn beating Cal. Cal's not that good. I don't think Auburn is either, though. So, come in there, get a win. It's a nice little environment to kind of build some culture with if you're Auburn. So good for them. Nothing really to write home about, though. Oklahoma State, not looking overly impressive, but they did beat Arizona State 27-15. Let's see what old buddy Jaden Rashada did. Not a very good day for old Jaden Rashada. 16 of 29, 167 yards and a touchdown and an interception through the air. They just were not good enough in this one. Alan Bowman, the current starting quarterback for Oklahoma State, went 11 of 16 for 113 yards and a fat 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, though. So, didn't totally torpedo him. I'm not sure how good Oklahoma State is this year. I think they got an easy schedule, and I think they're going to reel off some wins just based on that easy schedule. Even with that said, though, I'm not sure how good Oklahoma State is this year. They lost basically everyone in the transfer portal, and I'm not sure they picked up a whole lot to replace that, quite frankly. So good luck to them, I suppose. Let's just keep it moving, though. That's pretty much it for the Pac-12. Already did the SEC. So let's talk about, fuck it. Let's do the Big Ten, shall we? Big Ten. We're looking at week 2. Don't even look at week 3. And don't get ahead of ourselves now. Indiana beat Indiana State 41-7. Kansas beat Illinois at home 34-23. Jalen Daniels did play in this one. Had a pretty solid game, 21 of 29, 277 through the air, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Devin Neal had 10 carries for 120 yards and a touchdown as well. Highly efficient day for him. They just took care of business versus Illinois here, man. They absolutely won the contest between Bielema Ball and the new look Kansas. And, it ended up being close for a little bit there, but Kansas comes out on top when it's all said and done. I will be interested to see where old Lance Leipold goes after the either this season or next season, whenever he gets hired away from Kansas, because I think he's a hell of a coach. To even get Kansas to this point where they're just a fun football team, it takes a Herculean effort, and all credit should go to him on that one. It's just a good team that he's put together over the last 2 seasons now with Kansas. We'll see if they can get a little bit better than 6-6 this year, though. They started hot last year. We'll see if they can finish hot this year, this time around. Ohio State still didn't look awesome on offense once again, but they beat Youngstown State 35-7. Defense still looking strong. I am interested to see what they look like going into conference play, though. And it's not like Colin McCourt played badly. 14 of 20. 258 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers on the day. Finally figured out the secret sauce to offensive success is just, hey, throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. That's exactly what he did. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 7 of the 14 completions for Kyle McCord and 160 of 258 yards and 2 of the 3 touchdowns for Kyle McCord. He'll be the first wide receiver off the board, maybe the second overall pick after Caleb Williams. He is that good. Some are saying he might be even better than his dad, but his dad was a Hall of Famer. So let's slow our roll right now. Talent-wise, though, there's not There's not a receiver in the country that can hold a candle to him right now. He is far and away the best receiver in the country at this point. But Ohio State took care of business there. I don't think we really learned much against Youngstown State, but they did what they were supposed to do and won. Penn State probably learned even less in this one. They just beat the shit out of Delaware 63-7. Won't dwell on that. Nebraska loses to Colorado 36-14. Talked about that already. High vibes over there with Colorado. And I'm not talking about the weed they're smoking. I'm talking about the football team on the football field. Purdue won an absolute cripple fight with Purdue and Virginia Tech, 24-17. Both those teams stink. But one team had to win, and Purdue came out on top, so good for them. Michigan didn't look awesome against UNLV, but same final score as the Ohio State-Youngstown State game, 35-7. They took care of business. That's really all you need to know. The Cy-Hawk game, let's hope there was a little bit less gambling by the players in this one, but Iowa won it 20-13. Call me a skeptic, call me a cynic if you will. I'm just not sure Iowa's going to get to 25 points a game, in which case Brian Ferentz is out like some old trash. You want to talk about a terrible thing about my job, taking out the trash. Boy, the smell. You just can't imagine the smell of hot garbage on a hot day. It's horrifying. It's terrible, and it'll burn your nostrils right up, man. I'll tell you what. But back to the issue at hand here. Iowa, they beat Iowa State, didn't look prettiest. They're now 2-0. Even without that 25 points a game, though, I still think, very conceivably could win 10 games just because of how much of a joke the Big Ten West is this year. Could end up being okay, could end up having the privilege of getting just boat raced by one of either Penn State, Michigan State, or Ohio State in the... did I say Michigan State? Just Michigan. We'll talk about Michigan State here in just a bit. Oh boy, some news came out there, but we'll put a pin in that for right now. Either way, Iowa could win the West and have the privilege of being blown out by one of those three juggernauts over there. I don't think they're going to score 25 a game in doing that though. So best of luck to you. Cade McNamara looked like an Iowa quarterback. That's the best way you can describe it. 12 of 22, 123 yards. I don't know any of the players in this game, and I don't think either team is ridiculously good. Keep an eye, the next Iowa tight end that's going to be drafted one day, Luke Leachy, 3 receptions, 58 yards, just about half of Caden McNamara's passing yards. He is the next one, boys and girls. I don't know how high he's going to be drafted. He will be drafted somewhere, though, and I imagine he's, just based on the pedigree, he'll end up being a solid tight end at the next level, because that is literally all that Iowa does is create high-level tight ends. That's all they've done for the longest time, and they'll continue to do that as far as I'm concerned. Luke Leachy, a guy to keep your eye on if you're trying to be a football hipster, if you will, trying to look for the next big thing. Might be that guy right there. It's Iowa tight ends, man. What are you going to do? Outside of that, yes, let's talk about Michigan State, shall we? They won 45-14 against Richmond. That is not what anybody is talking about with this school coming out of this weekend, though. The biggest news of the weekend outside of the football field was the coming to light of a Title IX investigation delving into the actions or alleged actions of Mel Tucker. And I probably should have read up more thoroughly on the specific allegations. All I know for sure is he is accused of, calling up a prominent sexual assault survivor and an advocate for sexual assault causes, and not only doing that and acting inappropriately on the phone, allegedly jerking off on the phone as well. Yeah, he was placed on administrative leave. I don't know if he's officially fired just yet. He will be at some point, though. It is only a matter of time. This will be the end of Mel Tucker's, I would say illustrious, but really just one good year and a couple terrible years at Michigan State. And call me a cynic, but I'll just lay out a scenario for you. If Mel Tucker, say, went 11-2 the first year like he did, good for him there. Did a lot of good in that first year on the field, and then got 10 wins over the next couple years after that. I'm not gonna say he would be safe from an investigation like this, But what I will say is, I think the school might have a little bit more stick-to-itiveness when it comes to fighting this investigation or something like that. Call me a cynic, but if you got a good coach, I mean, Penn State showed it back in the day. Baylor showed it with Art Briles. If you got a guy in there, you're a lot more likely to turn a blind eye to things. With Mel Tucker having just gone through a terrible season last year after having a really good season the year before and then starting out terribly this year, I think, and again, call me a cynic, call me a bad person, I think he did not do himself any favors, and I have a slight inclination that the university was looking for just about any excuse they possibly could to fire this man for cause because they gave him a bajillion-dollar contract. It was a $70 million buyout. Now, since he got popped doing dumb shit, doing like sexual assault and all that sort of, which minimizes it by just calling it dumb, it's despicable what he is alleged to have done. And they've been investigating that for the better part of the last year and change, I think, before this all even came to light. Having been caught doing that, they're not going to have to pay a dime, I don't think, because they can fire him for cause and get out of that contract without having to do any of that sort of stuff and pay that big time buyout. And again, call me a cynic, but I feel like Michigan State was looking for this excuse really over the last season and going into this season. Mel Tucker was just dumb enough to give it to him. And listen, when you do what he is alleged to have done, you don't deserve to be a head coach of a college football team, really any football team for that matter. I wish the best for the alleged victims in this, or really, I think just one victim in particular. Was again, I should probably read up on this a little bit more, but I'm lazy and a bad podcast host, and not professional. So there you go, right there. He shouldn't be a head coach. To Michigan State's benefit, they're not going to have to pay him a dime on the way out the door, and they can just turn the page on what really amounted to be a mistake on the signing of that extension back when they signed him to that big time deal. I wish for the best for everyone involved. And unless Mel Tucker is guilty, then I wish for reform, but I don't like you as a person. I'll just leave it at that. This has been quite an episode so far, man. My head's not in the game today, folks. I'm sorry about that, but we'll just keep it going. Yeah, Austin Eckler's dealing with an ankle injury. American football, NFL football. How about all that? Michigan State won. Northwestern. Wow, look at them winning a game. They won 38-7 over UTEP. Good job, guys. Good job. You're not totally terrible. You're just really bad. Already talked about Wisconsin versus Washington State. Maryland beat Charlotte 38-20. They didn't look awesome in this one, but a win is a win when it's all said and done. Minnesota didn't look great, but they beat Eastern Michigan 25-6. Rutgers beat Temple 36-7. Temple's just god awful, but what else is new? And there's your Big Ten update for this past week. Let's look at the Big 12. Not week 3, go back to week 2 here, of course. Already talked about Kansas State versus Illinois. Already talked about Utah versus Baylor. Or talking about Kansas versus Illinois, not Kansas State. Kansas State beat the shit out of Troy. 42-13, nothing to really see there. BYU beat Southern Utah, the Battle of the Mormons there. You love to see it, quite frankly, but BYU won that one 41-16. Their resident Mormon zealot, if you will, Keaton Slovis, now the current quarterback for the BYU Cougars, 22-32. Saw a little 348 yards passing and 4 TDs for his 15th college football team. Good for him, I suppose. Nothing right home there about that one. Already talked about Iowa versus Iowa State. Oklahoma didn't look awesome, didn't look pretty, but they beat SMU 28-11. SMU, not a terrible team, quite frankly, so just getting past them with a win, I think that's probably all right in my book. Oklahoma, all they needed to do is win and keep it moving. They are still undefeated on the season. They are still ranked fairly highly up in the middle portion of the top 25 right now. West Virginia beat Duquesne. I know it's pronounced Duquesne, but calling it Duquesne's funnier to me, so I'm just going to call it Duquesne. They beat him 56-17, though. Nothing to write home about there. Cincinnati got in a dogfight with Pitt, and they came out on the other side, so good for them. 27-21. I'm still not sure either of those teams are great. Already talked about Texas, Alabama. Texas back? Question mark. Who's to say? You decide at home there, folks. That's interaction. Oregon beats Texas Tech. Already talked about that. UCF, didn't even see this one. UCF got in an absolute barn burner. 18-16 versus Boise State. They win that one. Boise State drops to 0-2. Really, this was just a defensive battle from start to finish. Hell, who's this guy? Kay Hudson, wide receiver, I think, for... Kobe Hudson, wide receiver for UCF, had like half of John Rice Plumlee's yards in this game. Wild, he had 5 receptions for 134 yards in this one. I mean, hey, a win is a win. UCF still kind of a dark horse for me to maybe make a run at the Big 12 title when it's all said and done here. Again, the Big 12 is just a fun conference year in and year out, and this year is no different. Rice beat Houston in double overtime, 43-41. I believe Rice was up like 28-7 at one point. Houston scores 21 unanswered to force overtime, and then Rice wins in overtime on the 2-point conversion off, not the 2-point conversion off, because that happens after like the 4th overtime or some shit like that. But they won. After you have to start doing 2-point conversions, I think in the second overtime, 43-41, Rice won. JT Daniels looking like an absolute stud playing for food out there. He ended up passing for what now? 28 of 42, 401 yards, 3 touchdowns for his 15th school in college. Good for him. Hopefully he's found a home with food. TCU won 41-6 over Nichols. Good for them, I suppose. And already talked about Oklahoma State beating Arizona State. Their schedule will dictate them maybe making a Big 12 title run. They are not that good, though. Don't be fooled, folks. That is the Big 12. Let's talk about the ACC real quick. Kind of a ho-hum week in the ACC outside of Miami, kind of announcing themselves as being back by beating Texas A&M in, half-full stadium, but you can only expect so much when the stadium's like 40 minutes away from the campus. That's what Miami's dealing with right there. It sucks. They should have a stadium on campus, but it is what it is. They've got to play in the Trop down there in Miami. Nothing you can really do about that, but a win is a win, and it's really put them in a good position to make a run here in the ACC. Like I said in the preseason, I think they're going to be all right this year. I don't know if they're going to be right there competing for an ACC title, but 8-4, 9-3, that would be a good regular season for this team, for Miami this year. Louisville beat the shit out of Murray State 56-0. Wake Forest beat Vanderbilt 36-20. Notre Dame dominated NC State even in the face of the rain delay 45-24. Audric Estime ran all over NC State. Sam Hartman still looks like an absolute killer out there. 4 touchdowns on 24 passing attempts. Audric Estime went 134 yards, 2 touchdowns as well. Notre Dame, they are looking like an absolute juggernaut this year. And you want to talk about another team that's a possible title contender. You just go look at the schedule and look at the preseason odds for a lot of the teams they're playing as far as winning their conference goes. They're playing Clemson. They're playing Ohio State. They're playing a boatload of good teams. So let me just look at the teams they got coming up. Yep, they got Central Michigan next week. Then they play Ohio State, at Duke, Louisville, USC comes to Notre Dame. They play Pitt. They play Clemson. And then they finish out with a few cupcakes there in Wake Forest and Stanford. That's just a treat to go on out the door right there after a tough season of games. If they get through that slate undefeated, they will be in the playoffs. There is not a force in nature that could keep them out of the playoffs if they got wins over Ohio State, Duke, USC, Clemson. They got wins over all those teams. Put them in the college football playoff now because they are that good. And Sam Hartman said it last week. I'll say it again here. He is the best quarterback, the most talented quarterback Notre Dame has had in quite some time. And with Audric Estime behind him, this could be a year where Notre Dame could make a run at this thing and maybe be in the title. There are so many teams that could possibly go to the playoffs, and only 4 can make it. It is going to be an absolute barn burner down the stretch of the season. I can't wait to watch it. But not USC, Notre Dame wins 45-24 over NC State. Already talked about Purdue, Virginia Tech. All-time cripple fight in that one. Holy Cross just taking Boston College to the very wire in this one. 28-31, they end up losing. Boston College ends up winning the game. That may be one of the last games Boston College wins this season, though. So, I mean, enjoy this while it lasts. It is going to come crashing down very, very quickly. James Madison, they were favored by like a touchdown coming into this one versus Virginia. Then they do end up winning, but they had to make a wholesale comeback to make it happen. I think they were down like 9 points in the fourth quarter at one point. Come back to win 36-35, so good for them. They're on the board. They got that win. The Fun Belt looking fun as usual, but they had to come back from behind against Virginia to do it, and Virginia is one of the worst teams in the conference and in all of Division I, quite frankly. Oh, look, my computer's running low on storage space. Cool, awesome. Thank you for letting me know. I digress on that front, though. What are we talking about? James Madison won. Georgia Tech beat South Carolina State 48-13. Clemson beat Charleston Southern 66-17. They struggled in the first half, though. They looked bad, and then just kind of turned it on in the second half and, out-talented them from there. Didn't look good coming out the gates, though. Still looking like the Clemson offense, not firing on all cylinders. Hopefully, at some point, they give Garrett Riley the latitude he needs to actually make this into a good offense. I don't have a whole lot of faith in that, though, so I'll just keep it moving. Texas A&M versus Miami. Miami won that one 48-33. Already talked about that. Miami may be back in full force, maybe making a run at the ACC title. Wouldn't bet on that this year, but they've got a team to maybe do it. Syracuse beat Western Michigan 48-7. North Carolina just barely snuck past Appalachian State. That was one of the greatest games of all last season, the 63-61 barn burner last year in the mountains. This year they go to North Carolina. App State had a chance to win this. They forced 2 overtimes. Just in the end, North Carolina wins 40-34. Drake May had himself a good day. App State just so tantalizingly close, just couldn't quite get there. Hell, even Drake May wasn't the star in this one. I think it was Omarion Hampton, sophomore running back for the Tar Heels. He had 234 yards on 26 carries and 3 touchdowns. He dominated this one. Drake May went 21 of 30, but didn't do a whole lot in the touchdown scoring category. It was basically, he scored one on the ground, but didn't score one through the air. Didn't turn the ball over either, which is, really all you can ask for if he's not going to create touchdowns. But didn't look great in this one, which is part of why App State was able to hang in there. But another really good game that App State could not quite get over the hump with. Solid one there, though. North Carolina, their defense still looks terrible, but they're a fun team as per usual with one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So must-watch television every single week, those guys. Duke beat Lafayette 42-7. Already talked about Cincinnati beating Pitt 27-21. Florida State handled business versus Southern Miss 66-13. And there you go. That is your Power 5 update right there. And with that, let's look forward to next week. Let's go alphabetical this time going into next week. First off, in the ACC, I'm looking at Bethune-Cookman, or really just Bethune. I guess Cookman got ousted at some point here, but Bethune going to Miami on Thursday night. That should be a game. It's on the ACC network. Miami should win by a bajillion points, so I'll leave it there. Virginia going to Maryland, so that's a game as well. Maryland is favored by 2 touchdowns at this point. Florida State traveling to Boston College, and Florida State is the line is -26 right now, and that's an appropriate line, I would say, and I think they still might cover. I might bet on that game, quite frankly, at -26. I think they're probably going to win by 30 or 40, quite frankly. Louisiana, or definitely not Louisiana. I don't know why I'm thinking Louisiana right now. Louisville is playing Indiana. That should be an interesting game, a little litmus test for how good maybe Louisville is or isn't this season. Excuse me. Wake Forest playing Old Dominion. And the fact that they're only favored by 2 touchdowns should tell you what the odds makers think of Florida State. Not that great this year, but better than Old Dominion, and that's all you can really all you can really come in here and take solace with, quite frankly. VMI is traveling to NC State. That's on the CW. Didn't know they had football games in the CW, but you learn something new every day. Minnesota's traveling to North Carolina. If I know anything about Minnesota, they'll find a way to turn that into a rock fight, and I think O'Marion Hampton is up to the task there of winning that rock fight. I like UNC in that one. They're favored by a touchdown and a half, not a touchdown, half, 7.5 points. You understand there though. Northwestern is traveling to Duke. And that's what I might actually bet on Duke, quite frankly. Minus 18.5. That's, I think they could probably win by 25, if not even more. They're just a much better team than Northwestern. Northwestern is just a bad, stinky poo-poo team this year, and I would expect Duke to take care of business in that one. Virginia Tech traveling to Rutgers, and this might be the patented, approved cripple fight of the week. Virginia Tech versus Rutgers in this one. Two just terrible teams. Rutgers was 2-0 though. I mean, they might end up being okay this year. I mean, they may not win a game again this year, but hey, 2-0 to start, so good for them, I suppose. I don't have any thoughts on that game. Like I said, this might be the cripple fight of the week right there. That's all I got to say about that. Georgia Tech is traveling to Ole Miss. Ole Miss is favored by 20 in this one, and I'd probably stay away from that one just because Ole Miss has been inconsistent. They're playing at home, granted, and they've had a bit of a history of running it up on teams that should not be on the field with them. But also, you just saw last week with Tulane, they let a backup quarterback hang in the game for most of that one until they kind of ran up the score down the stretch. Ole Miss is going to win this game. It's just by a matter of how much when it's all said and done. Syracuse playing Purdue. Syracuse favored only by 2.5. I think they should probably win that one with a certain degree of ease. Don't know why this quote-unquote potential spam is calling me right now, but I'm just going to let it ring. Let it ring, my friend. Pitt versus West Virginia. That's a big eat shit Pitt game if you're from West Virginia, and I don't know what the Pitt Panthers say, but that's an old rivalry from the Big East. That should be, Pitt is favored by 1 going into this one, and that should be a dandy. If you like good old-fashioned hatred, Pitt versus West Virginia is the game for you, quite frankly. It should be a fun one. I don't think either of those teams are that great, but those teams seem to play their best ball when they play each other, so that should be a fun one. Pitt traveling to Morgantown for that one. And then FAU is playing Clemson. Clemson should kick the piss out of FAU. No two ways about it, but you never know in this new era of Clemson football, so we'll just have to wait and see on that one. That's all for the ACC. Let's talk about the Big 12, I suppose. Just going down the list of conferences on my ESPN app here. No free ads, but you just got one right there for all the 5 people who happen to listen on a given week. Kansas State is playing Missouri. They're traveling to Missouri. That's going to be a good game here, folks. Missouri is underrated. They might have the best defense that is not either for Alabama or Georgia, and Alabama's defense didn't even look that great this past week. Missouri is a sneaky solid team this year. Maybe not the greatest offense in the world, but a really good defense. Kansas State, a really good young quarterback in Will Howard. They seem to just be continuing that momentum under Chris Kleiman that they had for so many years, under that old guy who was there for, Bill Snyder was there for about 50 years, probably there since the last World War, if I had to imagine. They just went straight from him to Chris Kleiman, so good for them for continuing that momentum going forward here. I like this matchup, man. I think it should be a fun game. I don't have a lean either way. It's a noon kickoff, but I think it might be one of the best games in the noon slate right now. Watch that one, Kansas State versus Missouri. I won't because I'll be at work, but you people with normal jobs that work a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and actually have off on weekends, go ahead, watch that. It'll be on your TV, free and available on the SEC Network if you have the SEC Network. I'll just keep it moving from there. Long Island traveling to Baylor. Baylor should win that one, should be their first win of the season, but you never know with how things have gone thus far. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. Iowa State is traveling to Ohio, getting them action spirit here, folks. Iowa State is favored minus 2.5 in this one, but weird things happen when you come into action land. That's all I'm going to say right there. Iowa State isn't the greatest team in the world, not a good team even, and Ohio always seems to be fun, if nothing else. So don't be surprised if Ohio comes out here and beats that Power 5 opponent, Iowa State, sending them back to Ames, not feeling so great. Sorry, Dad. Oklahoma playing against Tulsa this week. You may remember Tulsa from being absolutely just plastered to the field against Washington. I would expect a similar result here with Oklahoma. They didn't look good last week against SMU. SMU is a better team than Tulsa, though, and Oklahoma's favored by 28. I think that's an appropriate line, quite frankly. Villanova is traveling to UCF. UCF should kick their teeth in, quite frankly, so don't need to spend a whole lot of time on that one. Miami of Ohio traveling to Cincinnati. Cincinnati should win, but that's, it's a Power 5 team playing against another MACtion team. Hey, weird stuff happens with the MACtion. I'll just say that right now. You got to watch out for them. That's. I'll leave it at that. South Alabama, sneaky solid FCS team. I think they're FCS. I don't want to piss on anyone's grave right now, but I think they're FCS. They always seem to be in it with every FBS team that they play against. I remember South Alabama was the team that upset Mississippi State. I want to say a couple years back, but that was like back when I was in college. So like 7 years ago or something like that. Back when it's like the first year after Dan Mullen was gone, I believe, and Nick Fitzgerald was in there. It was like 5 and 7 year, all that sort of stuff. South Alabama was the one to upset them in week 1 of that year where they went 5 and 7. They're playing Oklahoma State. They're going to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is favored by a touchdown. And I think so highly of South Alabama that I would probably stay away from that one. I don't got a great feel on it. Oklahoma State, I don't think they're that good. And I think South Alabama is going to give them a game in this one, quite frankly. Tarleton State is traveling to Texas Tech. And honestly, I think Texas Tech is probably going to beat the absolute piss out of them. I think Texas Tech, they were backed up against the wall last week. They still need to win something fierce this week. I think this is the one where they just circle the wagon and say, all right, let's get this thing right and just boat race Tarleton State. I think that's what's on the docket there going forward. BYU is traveling to Arkansas. That's a fun little Big 12 SEC matchup. The Mormons versus the Rednecks. Love to see it. Love to see it. Hillbillies even, if you will, over there in Arkansas, depending on what part of Arkansas you are in. Arkansas is favored by 9.5 right now. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. I think Arkansas is a little bit weaker than maybe some had expected coming into this year. I think the transition to the new offense has not been smooth thus far with KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders there. They got the pieces to go. They just, Kendall Briles was actually a pretty good offensive coordinator for how much people seem to dislike him outside of the field. Just a very good offensive coordinator, and it's yet to be seen with his replacement how that's going to go. I think BYU has a good chance to come in here and make a game of this thing. I think 9.5 is just too many points. I think this is going to be a good one when it's all said and done for the 7:30 time slot. ESPN 2, I doubt anyone's going to be watching it, but I might be. We'll see what happens there. I won't be working at that point. Pitt versus West Virginia, already talked about that. Wyoming is traveling to Texas, and maybe it's a bit of a letdown game, but Texas is favored minus 28.5. I would expect them to cover that after beating Alabama by double digits, but there is always the possibility of a letdown game, and Wyoming did beat Texas Tech in week 1, that being at home given, but still a feisty team coming into Texas, possible letdown spot. We'll see what happens here, folks. I think Texas is probably going to run them off the field, but don't be surprised if Wyoming hangs around for a little bit longer than they probably should. TCU is traveling to Houston, who lost to Food last week. TCU is favored minus 7.5. They were favored by minus 21, though, against Colorado. So who's to say? I think they should win, but that's no guarantee of a successful formula there. We'll just have to wait and see on that. That's a good little... that should be a fun matchup, if nothing else. So Houston should score some points. TCU should score some points. Might be a bit of an overplay if you're looking into that sort of market, but I'd probably stay away from the lines, quite frankly. I don't know if either of these defenses are good enough to pull away at any point. Kansas versus Nevada. Kansas should win that one pretty handily. I don't got a whole lot of things to say other than that. So that's it for the Big 12. Let's talk about the Big 10 real quick. Virginia playing Maryland. Damn, I always forget Maryland is in the Big Ten now. I just thought that was a regular old ACC matchup when I talked about it before previewing the ACC, but I digress on that front. Penn State's playing Illinois on the road. That should be a nice little litmus test to see just how good they are. I think they should probably run Illinois off the field, but this is the first big time sort of. Well, I depends on what you consider big time. It's a solid little test, like I said, little litmus test to see how good they are against Illinois. Illinois is a solid team, not a great team, a team that Penn State should beat fairly comfortably, but you can never just take that for granted going in. Well, I'm interested to see what Drew Aller and co. do against Illinois in this one. See if Bielema ball prevails or if Penn State comes out there and just whips their ass, which I kind of think they will do. I think Penn State is a legit team this year, possible national championship contender. Louisville traveling to Indiana. I think I already talked about that one. It's the one I kept saying Louisiana for whatever reason, but it's Louisville. They're playing Indiana and they're favored by 10.5. We'll have to see how that one, or 9.5 rather. See how that one pans out. Georgia Southern's playing Wisconsin. Should be a nice little pick-me-up game for Wisconsin in this one. Expect old Ches Malusi and Braylon Allen to have big-time days on the ground in this one. Minnesota versus North Carolina. Already talked about that one. Who's going to win? Is it going to be a rock fight, or is Drake May and company going to control this one with high-flying offense? We will have to wait and see. Northwestern's playing Duke. Already talked about that one. Western Michigan playing Iowa. Iowa's favored by 28.5. Are we sure they can score 28 points? That's my real question. They should cover that, but can they? That is the real question underpinning this whole thing. Can they even score 28 points? Virginia Tech versus Rutgers. Again, cripple fight of the week, and Rutgers is favored by a touchdown. This one, that should tell you just how bad Virginia Tech is. But if you're a sicko, go watch that one. That should be a fun one for you at 3:30 on the Big Ten Network. Western Kentucky playing Ohio State. Ohio State should just boat race them. Nothing to worry about there. Whew! Washington's playing Michigan State on the road. Only favored by 16 in this one. Michigan State just lost their head coach. A program that is in disarray. Probably a lot of guys on that team. Also, by the way, since their head coach was just fired, or I don't know if it's official yet or what, I still don't know what the legal vagaries are in that. If and when Mel Tucker is officially fired, the transfer portal opens for all those guys, so they can just enter their names in right away. Probably some guys looking to maybe jump ship there. Minus 16, I think Washington may win by 40 in this one, and I'm just going to say it right now. I'm going to have to get back to you on an official line next episode. I'm taking that as one of my bets right now. At minus 16, I am going to bet Washington over Michigan State, even with it being on the road. I just think there's so much disarray going on in Michigan State, and Washington looks like an absolute buzzsaw right now. So chalk that one onto the official record. I'm taking Washington minus 16 versus Michigan State. We'll get back to the line on Thursday. I'll tell you exactly what I took it at just based on what the best number was. But minus 16, tentatively, that's the placeholder what I'm taking Washington at. Northern Illinois playing Nebraska. You'd think this would be Nebraska's first win, but haven't looked great so far this year, so who's to say? Should win this one, though, unless, you're not a believer in Matt Rule. I'm a believer in Matt Rule. I just never thought that this year was going to be the year, but I digress on that front. Bowling Green's traveling to Michigan. Michigan's favored by 40, and that is an appropriate line. That's all you need to know. Syracuse versus Purdue. I think we already talked about this here briefly. Syracuse minus 2.5 on the road. Probably would be my lean in that one. That's on NBC for some reason. I don't know why. No idea at all why that's an NBC game. Not necessarily one that I necessarily want to watch at that time slot. But it's not a fantastic week of games, as you can probably tell by the games I've read off thus far. That being said, that's it for the Big Ten. So let's talk about the Pac-12 right quick. Man, I just need to get into some conference play here, man. The Pac-12 is going to be so much fun when they actually start playing each other. They're still kind of playing their bullshit out of conference games, though. So, Weber State traveling to Utah. Utah should beat them by 1 billion. San Diego State traveling to Oregon State. Same thing. Oregon State's favored by 24.5 right now. That's an appropriate line. Idaho's playing California. Washington's taking on Michigan State at Michigan State. Like I said, that's Washington by a billion. Northern Colorado versus Washington State should be relatively easy dub for Washington State. Central's playing UCLA, should be a nice tune-up game for Dante Moore there. Hawaii traveling to Oregon. Oregon's favored by 38. Again, appropriate line, quite frankly. Sacramento State's playing Stanford. Maybe Stanford wins that one. Could be fun. Colorado State's playing Colorado. That's where game day is for whatever reason. Colorado's favored by 22.5, and they got game day. You could have chosen... You could have just waited. You could have just waited. Let me just look at Colorado's schedule. You didn't have to burn the game day visit on Colorado this week, because the very next week they're playing Oregon. The week after that, they are hosting USC. Further down the line, if you want to go, they're playing against UCLA. They got Oregon State at home. They're playing Utah. Colorado State, and I get it. There's probably better, more engrossing games in those other weeks that they're probably going to end up going to anyways. But you could have chosen a better game to go to Colorado for game day than Colorado State versus Colorado. Colorado's going to boat race them probably in the first quarter. Minus 22.5 might even be a little bit light on that line. I think they're going to absolutely dominate this game, quite frankly. But there you have it. It's game day for whatever reason. They just felt like going there saying hi to Deion Sanders, I suppose. Fresno State is playing Arizona State, and Fresno State is actually favored by -3. So that should tell you what the odds makers think of Arizona State this year. Not that great. Jaden Rashada, only thing you're hoping for this season for Arizona State is that Jaden Rashada looks good down the stretch of this year. Outside of that, going to be a long year, folks. It's an absolutely stacked Pac-12, and y'all don't have a whole lot to go up against it. So Pac-12 after dark, Fresno State versus Arizona State. Let's hope it gets wild over there. Let's just hope it gets wild. UTEP playing Arizona as well, with Arizona favored by 17. You would think they would cover in that game. I'm staying away from it, though, quite frankly. That's the Pac-12 for you. And let's look at the SEC this week. LSU traveling at noon to play Mississippi State. LSU is currently favored by 10, and I am worried about this game. I think defensively, we match up okay with their receivers. I was not encouraged by what I saw this last week though, versus Jaden Delora. Not good. If we play like we did against Arizona, we may lose by 40. I'm hoping, just based on post-game comments by Zach Arnett talking about how the offensive game plan was not up to par. I think we all agree on that. I think he's got the right idea. I think he's going to put the ball more in the hands of Will Rogers in this one and kind of use the run game to make the pass game better, and vice versa, and kind of go with the flow that way instead of just mindlessly pounding the rock on every single down. Maybe the most egregious play call of last week for Mississippi State was on 4th and 2. They ran at a critical time in the fourth quarter, mind you. They ran a read option play with Will Rogers. My goodness, his name just escaped me there for a second. With Will Rogers at quarterback, not Mike Wright at quarterback. Will Rogers at quarterback on that down, doing the read option. The defensive end crashed down immediately, and he just handed it off to Woody Marks and just got buried in the backfield, quite frankly. There's not a defensive end in the country worth their salt that is going to bite on Will Rogers on a run action with an RPO like that. Not an RPO, a read option like that. Hate that play call. Let's try to stay away from doing that ever again. Absolutely hated that, but if they can get the play calling right, the LSU defense looked vulnerable in the first game of the season versus Florida State. The offense looked a little discombobulated. Maybe if you can get Jaden Daniels off the spot a little bit, get him under pressure, maybe we can make this thing into a rock fight and possibly get an upset. It's in Davis Wade at home for Mississippi State, so there's a snowball's chance, I suppose. It's only a 10-point line, so could be worse. I'm scared that they're going to get blown out by 40, though. Pray for me, folks. Just pray for me. Tennessee's going to Florida, and it's a big-time rivalry for the two. That being said, Tennessee's favored by 6.5. Would I be shocked if Tennessee came out there and won by 30? No, I would not. No, I would not. I mean, Florida is. You want to talk about the SEC being down? Florida's a big part of that too. They are not good this year. I mean, they took care of business last week, but going into Utah, they were just bad. They were not good at all. And they looked, not only did they not look good, they looked undisciplined, which is somehow even worse for the head coach Billy Napier over there. Not looking good at all down there in Tennessee. They didn't look great last week, but I think they have top to bottom a much better team than Florida. I could see them running Florida straight off the field, even on the road, getting an impressive win there in Gainesville. I would imagine Tennessee wins this one, but it is a rivalry game, so weird things have happened in the past, and they will continue to happen in the future, quite frankly. Kansas State playing Missouri. I already talked about that one. I like that matchup. I think that's going to be the best game of the noon slate, quite frankly. South Carolina is traveling to Georgia. Georgia's favored by 27.5. And this will be the first real kind of litmus test to see what Georgia is this year. They should win by about 1 million in this one. But we will find out a lot if they don't. I think South Carolina is not very good this year. Another team that was expected to be all right, but ended up being a down year thus far. Maybe they can round into shape as the year goes on, but that offense has looked terrible as it did for most of last year, and the defense hasn't looked good at all this year. So not liking their chances against Georgia, but that'll be one to keep an eye on as far as what Georgia looks like against them, because it is their first Power 5 competition of the year. Alabama, all the way down at number 10, is traveling to South Florida. Alabama's favored by 32 right now. A lot like LSU last week. I think Alabama is about to run South Florida out of the continental United States, right off the Florida Panhandle into either the Gulf or the Atlantic Ocean. You take your pick. I think Alabama's going to win this game by a lot. I'm not taking the minus 32 because that's a lot of points, but I would not. I'd be shocked if they didn't win by 4 touchdowns or more. I'll just put it to you that way. Outside of that, UL Monroe playing Texas A&M. Ho-hum. Texas A&M is favored by minus 36.5. Nothing to see there. Samford is traveling to Auburn. Auburn should win that one fairly easily. Vandy's playing UNLV. Vandy's only favored by 4. Could be the barn burner of the day because Vandy stinks and UNLV is not very good either, but, you know, they're two teams on a very similar level. So go ahead. Have your cripple fight. I'll laugh from the corner over here as Mississippi State gets beat by 40 versus LSU. Georgia Tech playing Ole Miss this week. Already talked about that. Sneaky sort of game here for Ole Miss. Maybe Georgia Tech covers. Maybe they don't. Ole Miss has not looked impressive outside of that game against Mercer, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. BYU versus Arkansas, I just talked about that one. Might be a dangerous game for Arkansas, currently favored 9.5 at the moment, but we'll wait and see. And then Akron, the Akron Zips playing against Kentucky. Kentucky's favored by 25, and the question still stands, can they score 25? That is the real question coming to this one. Not necessarily so much as Iowa scoring 28, but still, that offense did not look good over the last couple games they've played so far this year, so yet to be seen. That's your entire Week 3 slate, though. It's not the greatest slate of games. LSU Mississippi State is probably the marquee game in my mind, and that's only because my team is in it, quite frankly. Outside of that, it is a not very good slate overall. Watch out for that K-State versus Missouri game. I think that's going to be a dandy in the noontime slot, but outside of that, not really a whole lot to look forward to this week. Week 4, though, we just kind of look ahead. I mean, we got Ole Miss traveling to Alabama. I mean, we got all sorts of matchups throughout the top 25. So we just got to get through this week, and then we are going to be right in the thick of things as far as the season goes. Oh yeah, we got ranked matchups across the board this coming week in Week 4. So we just got to get through Week 3, get to Week 4, and then we are home free, folks. But with that, I think that's all for this episode. My brain is tired. I am dead inside, but you've been listening to Unqualified Analysis. We got this thing going 2 times a week during the football season. We got college football on Tuesdays, NFL on Thursdays at this point until inevitably I once again just change it back to the other way because I'm indecisive if nothing else. So stay tuned. Right now it's NFL on Thursdays, college football on Tuesdays. If you like the show, go ahead, subscribe. Rate, share with a friend. Why not? Why not help the boy out a little bit here? Yeah, I'm trying to think outside of that. If you want to contact the show, shoot me a DM on Twitter at Caleb Verzak. Link will be in the description, so you have to spell my fucked up Eastern Bloc name, or you can shoot me an email at unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. It's unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. If you would like to send in your opinions, send in your hot takes or something, or just engage on Twitter. Get this thing growing a little bit, shall we? Outside of that, though. This has been Unqualified Analysis. As always, I've got zero clue what I am talking about, but one thing I do know what I'm talking about is things that I learned this week, quite frankly, and one of those things was Nazi Germany's ground forces, the Wehrmacht, as you may know them. If you didn't, there you go. Nazi Germany's army was called the Wehrmacht, spelled with a W, not a V. They lost a quarter of all of their military equipment that they had to their name. A quarter of the Nazi military equipment for the Wehrmacht was lost just in the Battle of Stalingrad alone. That's wild. I got to figure out some new facts that aren't World War II related in this coming episode coming out on Thursday. But until then, have a good week, guys. Have a good week.